I want to take this moment to thank the community for their continued support. We had a little scare with the refrigeration, but we're back to full strength now. Look for some bigger and better things to come as we continue to work this, make this store a best place to shop for the community. Thank you for your support, and everyone have a great fall. Thank you.
All right, well, introduce yourself. Gotcha. Well, my name is Joshua Maeir. I have this kind of 10 years encompassing show going on at Off Ludlow Gallery right now. And it's in its last week. It closes next Friday on the 30th. So if you haven't come out to see it yet, stop by and check out the 10 years of work. That's the span that it's at least been in. So, oh, it's really an amazing collection. 10 years of fragility. Yeah, 10 years of fragility. That's a good way to kind of look at it. It's been nice because I've got this, you know, I've never really seen a lot of it together, these different avenues of what I make. I kind of ride the fence between this very technical craftsman, and then I'll go in the forays of, you know, finer art and sculpture. And then when I get tired of trying to work out the puzzle of that, I'll go back to something simpler with some rules like traditional pots. And then after I get a little bored with that, I'll bounce around to a new conceptual idea in sculpture. So I'm definitely a ceramicist. I flip-flop back and forth pretty readily. So.
Well, the use of like feathers and faux fur and so forth in your work, where does that come from?
Well, I started as my undergraduate degree from Bowling Green. Kind of a renaissance, man, really. My undergraduate degree is actually in creative writing, and about, I don't know, halfway, more than halfway into that degree, I got into blowing glass. I took a ceramics class at Bowling Green, and the glass shop was right next door. And I didn't really care much for the surfaces that were coming out in the clay. Everybody up there, Bowling Green's a very heavy wood firing department, and I didn't really care for the finished look of that. A lot of browns and earth tones just wasn't quite what I was after. And then so I started in glass because it was vibrant and colorful and, you know, transparent, things like that. And it was kind of rock and roll art. So everybody had the chip on their shoulder, and everybody was, you know, working with fire and things like that. So I was very into that. And I did that for just about a decade. By the time I graduated, I didn't want anything to do with writing. All I wanted to do was blow glass. So I did that for a while. I traveled around the Eastern Seaboard doing Haystack and Penland and Corning Museum of Glass. And then I moved to Kansas City and worked for a professional production glass blower for a little while. And then through a health situation, an injury, I ended up getting out of that job or needing out of that job. And then I switched over to clay because I'm a maker. I have to be making. And so I had this real love for one material and then started in another. That kind of was the birth of mixing materials. And then by the time I got to graduate school, and they were like, "Well, we'd really like you to. Your pots are fine, but we'd really like to see you push your work a little more conceptually." Then it kind of opened some doors. My professor, Bede Clark, was a little lost the first year. He's like, "I don't know what to do with you. Like, I am an old school ceramics teacher, you know, and you want to do things in glass, you want to do things with feathers and fibers and things. I just don't know what to do with you." And I convinced him, you know, that my predominant focus was clay, but that I wanted to see what other materials would complement that work, what other materials could be worked into it. And it just sort of led me down avenues of exploration, of finding materials and means that would accentuate the clay. I loved clay because it could be anything. You can make it look like metal. Other than the transparency of glass, you can achieve all of the vibrant colors that are present there. The plastic quality allows it to, be molded however, drill holes in it, cut areas out, build onto it. Where I felt other materials as the base were a little less to my liking. And it just opened up some doors to work out, issues with other materials.
You're a master of the surface. That looks like eggshell. This looks like it's a vegetable. I guess the next thing you know, you're going to do a 3D printing.
I have no interest in that. It's limiting me in my sculptural and ceramic job search because it's the new fandangled thing. My professor at Bowling Green is actually who developed the material that comes out of the 3D printer for ceramics, John Ballesterian, and he I just was never into it. I was my teacher in Bowling Green, I really gravitate and go back to often. He was very much about the hand of the artist and really pumping that idea into it. And I feel like modern applications have got to a point where it's, other than the fact that an artist programs the computer, their hand is very separate from it. It's this sort of perfect machine made thing. And I've just kind of leaned farther, away from that kind of anti that. So,
well, you can almost see what it's going to. It's like Henry Moore, instead of just doing it all in his head, somebody is making their little models and then projecting them in a room in full-size scale,
mm-hmm.
and getting an idea of the whole thing, manipulating the image, tweaking it, maybe even pushing their hands to push it, and then the digital program is created and it's carved out of stone.
Yeah, it definitely has amazing merits. I'm very in love with the process of slip casting, and I know several artists that will go through the process of using. They'll use a 3D model that they've made to create the positive in the mold. I might fall down that rabbit hole a little bit, but I am very, for a long time, I was really in conflict. I never really felt like an artist. I always felt far more craft centered, as a craftsman. I think that's for the functional stuff, that's very much where I'm feeding into, is this, high craftsmanship of these very unusual, very technical, functional works, but they're just of, high refined craftsmanship. My teacher always called me a little fussy because I would just like fuss with work. I could never be a production potter where I made, 50 in a day or something like that. I was content making, 2 or 3 a day that took quite a bit of, focus time and attention and puzzlery. And so I'm just kind of in this gray area. I don't really know where I fit, but I just keep plugging away at it. So.
Well, reading your statement, I kind of want to know what drugs you're on.
Just a lot of supplements and my insulin. So
you allude to a lot of dreams. Did I say dreams or fantasy?
I think that that's a link towards the language of surrealism, rather than being a very direct, from dreams, but just these kind of. I think I've always talked about my work more like a writer than I do as an artist. And I've had to work on that over the years, but I always just picture the work as being these sort of snippets of, fictions from fictions of my head. They might be characters, they might be things that I might see in a character's house, or, or decor ideas of a story. The bugs, all the bugs in the show are from my 3 years at the University of Missouri in Columbia as a grad student, and that body of work went hand in hand with a body of kind of poetic prose, and it was all based on the story of a scientist who destroys the earth, and then in this sort of aghast realization that he has no friends, he goes about creating his own friends. And so the development of all these kind of bugs and things were in tandem with this story that was unfolding. At the same time, this kind of exploration of like lots of texture and juxtapositions and color and finishes and texture was really, at the forefront of its development.
Well, we really need that story. I feel like these are all creatures out of Star Trek.
I get a lot of Star Trek. I get a lot of Dune references.
Yes,
I get a lot
of
Star Wars or Alien. Part of my thesis was very much on the biomechanics of H.R. Geiger. So what was influencing like the legs and posturing.
Right. So you got a feature-length movie in with these, right?
Yeah, they're all coming out of somewhere strange. So
so this was a certain period in life. Do you do the animals anymore?
I do. I would. So if we're looking at the work, the faces, like this guy right there,
right,
and the one across the way with the teardrops and the sort of the flooded face of tears, but they're all with skulls. That's kind of the newest work.
Right.
I'm exploring both the surface that's on there, the way that surface is applied is a big deal right now for me. It is a mono printed surface, so it's got, I'm building all of those images on paper first before I move it. And I'm building them on paper in a ceramic material before I transfer it to the actual ceramic form. But that's the new avenue.
Wow.
The bugs are, and it's been nice for me because I'm like watching this stuff develop, because this one here with the black feathers and the kind of lettuce body, that was one of the first ones of graduate school. And I was exploring like what it would take to get these feathers integrated in with the form. And also like the feet were made very separate and they're actually articulated so they could move in there a little bit. And it was just, in trying to figure out how to do these things that I wanted to do. And I could just sort of stair step around what directions, that they all went. And that little yellow caterpillar there on the corner was one of the first ones that I started. So the circle pattern on it is all the same way that the bottle and that bottle and the face are all rendered. And then when I came to Cincinnati, I came as a resident artist to, somebody's doing a little drawing there.
Well, we're going to take a break here, and I want to try to figure out what this. I'm trying to think now. So we have this is your newer work with the teardrops, and that's a ceramic applique.
Wow. So everything that's on there is a clay material, ceramic material. So I don't have any, all of the other works, I've been very concerned with, what feathers are going to look best with this, what handmade beads and can I.
So here, we're looking at this screen. Those are appliques, and that's an applique on ceramic that's then fired.
Yep. So all the color on the noses that are implied that they can be swapped out. It's all clay. The surfaces are all clay. There's not a lot of other materials that I've previously been focused on.
That's applique too.
Yep. All of that is colored clay on the surface.
Do you create that with like on a printer?
Nope. It's all what they call a monoprint. So I do it on to a piece of paper.
Yes, I see.
And then move each of those, those images I can hand select and cut out. It's essentially like a caveman's version of screen printing. Wow. The next thing to do, sort of the next foray to do, would be to get the images exact and to put them on a silk screen so that they would be exact.
Right.
But that goes down that avenue where, it's kind of sort of a machined kind of means, not that you have to have a machine to make a silk screen or to create, the printed quality on work. But it's that exact repetition that might be just a little bit too much for what I want to do, especially when my forms change so much. I'm not putting them on, 50 cups that are the same diameter, that are the same height. A lot of them are, one of a kind, like the red bottle with the skulls. I made that once. I don't have any desire to make that again. And so it starts to lean more towards a sculptural vessel.
Yes.
Once I figure it out, it influences the next one, but it's very unlikely that I'll repeat that form again. So, and I think there might be a little bit of combat between the maker of utility and the sculptor, the dual role that I occupy.
This is a bug.
It is. It's
Rather large.
It's pretty big. It's right around about 40 inches, I think. 40 inches top to bottom, wall mounted.
How fragile is that? Are they? I'm scared to death.
They're a little stronger than you would think, but I have sort of pickled myself with how fragile they are. They're hard to ship. So if I can't drive them myself, it's kind of like a no-go for like show opportunities. So I had the American Museum of Ceramic Arts in LA asked me for a piece. We jumped through the hoops to get it out there, spent a fortune on crating, and it still was destroyed beyond repair. So that was kind of an end all. So if I can't hand deliver them, it tends to kind of worry me more than probably necessary. The crates that I make are quite well padded. I'm really unsure about what they did to it to destroy the one that went to LA so perfectly. It was ugly.
And this vase here,
a little easier packaged for sure.
Well, you can pull the top off. There's something inside.
It is a bottle.
But that lower stem just seems, fragile.
Yeah, the way that they're actually attached is extraordinarily strong. It has a 2-ton epoxy that keeps them together, but it's made in a way that you can never see the epoxy or see how it's put together. But I've done some tests where the overall form would break, purposefully dropping a few on the ground to see, what the strength of the construction is, and the body of the clay breaks far more than I've actually never seen the joinery where the foot meets the body of the pot. I've never actually seen it break off. It's always just the nature of the body of the clay that, breaks, and I'm dropping it from, a 4 foot, 5 foot distance. So it's actually far stronger than you think.
Well, this piece here is one of your newer pieces.
That one is actually, I finished that the first year of graduate school. We're counting the 10 years. That one's number 1.
Oh, really? I guess I'm confused as your timeline.
Yep, so that one was number 1. That one would be 2.
Which one was that?
So the knocker, which is the one you just had on the screen, that one would be number 1. And then Maggie here with the black feathers is
too many to run.
Yeah, so it's going to be hard to run through there.
Now, when was this series?
That one was done during the residency. However, I've had gone back to exploring this slip casted form, which is the skull that's in there with the hats. And that is actually, it's oddly linked to the door knocker. The skull that makes the bird skull is the actual skull that's on the catacomb skulls. And there is about 4 years between those.
So the door knocker can be used as a door knocker?
It is. It swings.
Oh my word!
The study was mostly how to get a functional or a material into the thing that would allow it to swing and move like a door knocker. So I had to fabricate parts that would go into the hinge part, and then figure out how to join those two. And those two not only act as the swing or the hinge on the door knocker, but it also keeps all of it together because it's like a puzzle. All of it comes together and is either cinched in by tension and the rubber inserts, or pins in certain areas. So
Well, you're going to be developing your own spacecraft here soon.
it might be.
So here, the curlicues at the top.
Another exploration into how to get things done. So all of those little curlicues at the top, those are all made completely separately. So they're essentially a bead on a wire, and then they are fired and glazed completely separately and inserted into the body while it's wet. And then when the body shrinks down through drying and then twice through firing, it holds on to those wires. So each of those can be essentially made separate from the work. And it's also nice because if I were to do all of that at one time and I had one break, or I had some glaze that ran or did something and got them all stuck together, I would, you know, that would be a month and a half, 2 months worth of work that would just be, I could either spend another month repairing it or just scrap it and move on. So the legs, those black legs are all made separate, and I've figured out an inserted method. It's got like a male and female part, and they slip in there and with a little epoxy, and so you can never see the way that they're constructed.
Well, I guess, you know, in the world of art, the hell with how it's made. It's how it appears to the person just viewing it. You know, it's not good to talk too much about how it's made. I mean, it might be good for the artists, but it's just. Yeah,
the vast majority of viewers, you know, aren't too concerned with it, the end product. And I think that, you know, as fascinated as I am with the puzzlery of making, you know, the end product is, you know, always the goal.
Another wonderful bug. Two more. There's the mother of all bugs. I guess you were obsessed by a centipede when you're terrorized by a centipede as a young child.
I think that childhood memories, I spent a lot of time on, I had my dad's family and my mom's family were both pretty much Kansas dirt farmers practically. And I'd spent a lot of summers there doing that and hanging out on the farm. And it was always running into these kind of wild, threatening bugs and being fascinated. Wasn't really ever terrorized by them, but just fascinated by the way that they, you know, moved and the way that they looked and just the sort of strange qualities of insects.
Well, this time of year in the fall, the caterpillars come out, and boy, they are pretty interesting. This one certainly could be a real species somewhere. And this is your newer work?
Yeah, that's actually one of the first of the newer, just sort of exploring this idea of these sort of black shadowy faces with an insert or parts that would be bright and colorful and vibrant, and, you know, deal with emphasis and have a little bit of a little commentary.
Yeah, you alluded to writing poetry and going with these pieces.
The bugs certainly were on that track. These are a little less subtle. I think a lot of the blackface series are, you know, and I guess I should use more of a word like these sort of shadowy face, because I've got, you know, this one that's above me is in graphite. I've got a matte black. I've got a different kind of a steel black, and I look at them more as being these relatively, you know, just like faces in the shadow with, you know, the things that are colorful, you know, the color itself being the emphasis that, you know, sort of drives the understanding and things of what's going on.
Well, these faces are all in the same vein as far as a personality, a long face, you know, somewhat a take away from the theatrical masks. You see the smiling one, the frowning one.
Yeah,
They almost seem like a shoe-in for that. I don't know where that came from. It must be pretty ancient. Even I think they used the mask in Shakespeare's time.
yeah. People tell me that they're all still looking very masculine. Like, that's probably, very true. I try to leave the hair off of them so that they're just this sort of bald, figure that's humanoid. People are seeing that that is a human, but not so much like this is a female figure or this is directly a male figure.
I'm a portrait painter.
Mm-hmm.
I study faces as it's an ancient Chinese craft, face reading. So every part of the face has something to do with the person's personality.
Gotcha.
So the
That'd be a good thing for me right now. So figure out that.
Well, everybody goes to these benchmarks of what a face is when they're trying to describe or draw a face. They'll instinctively use it, but the large clevis in the upper lip is indicative of vitality, robustness. So this is the major feature of this face. Someone confident, authoritative. Were you thinking of anything like that?
I guess I don't think that I was specifically
Virulent,
aiming for that consideration. I think I was I wanted this one to look a little bit like the character of Nosferatu.
Oh yes.
So he's got a little bit of a pointed ear. He's got a little bit of a sneer. I think with the title pointing out the problem with men like Carlson is a reference towards Tucker Carlson.
Right.
But I was trying to lean a little bit further and not be directly sculpting someone, and so I chose the path of kind of outlining this very critical narrative with these faces, these changing faces that I've witnessed in the media. So I could say the things that I wanted to without having 4 faces up by just implying that these sort of masks, these noses that this character can put on and off is saying what I needed to. So.
Well, the pointed ears, the feature of that in face reading is mathematical. They're mathematician. I'm trying to figure out that chin. It's kind of a weak chin, but it's not. It's a dominant chin.
Yes, it's pointy, but it is weak. He's got a little bit of a double chin as well. I tend to go back to the skulls. When I was moving between my my career in glass that was quickly fading and moving into another medium, I started by this idea that I was going to slip cast. It was in a much cooler medium, a much slower paced medium than hot glass. And I was working with molds. I had done that a lot in my, with glass. And so that was something that I knew. And I was exploring how I could apply those things with this new material. Now that was actually one of the first, figures that I was making. I was doing a lot of pottery. That picture that's on the screen there of me standing with the pots, like I was working with pottery. I was working with that surface, and the skulls just kind of played really nicely. It also allowed me to make the skulls very exactly. They could be the same, but each of their hats or each of their faces in the way that they're fired were completely unique, completely one of a kind. So while the one that's on the wall with the catacombs, that one's very, very controlled. This one that's on the screen here, other than the areas of, that one was, for the residency at Queen City Clay, I was working out the issues of getting all that color on the hats, how I was going to do that, the process in which, working out the details of that. But the skull wasn't so much important as it was the study of how I was applying this kind of color and things and this printed image on a surface. And then going back to the smoke fired one, or the ones with the hats rising up off that one. That was essentially just a exploration with using that former surface and how to get those things applied. I used this one specifically across the period of a semester to work with my students on, the importance of testing things, and that those tests could even become a work of art. How to go about, really creating imagery in a firing atmosphere that you have almost virtually no control over, other than you can light it and then step away.
Right.
But the surface of things is all one of a kind. It's 90% irrepeatable. So.
Well, it makes you feel like, do you have a real skull at home?
Do I have a real what?
Skull.
I do not.
Would you want one?
I'd probably be okay with it. Don't know that I would seek it out, but I've also, I don't know, I think my last count of the skulls is somewhere around 1,000 that I've made in 10 years.
Oh.
A little more than 10 years. And so they're very, very repeatable, and they've never been, other than the form being repeatable, the surface qualities and things like that, I've never produced two that were the same. So it's always nice to know that I've got
So many personalities.
There for a while. The ones that I didn't like enough to sell, I was taking on the road on vacations and tucking them in the nooks and crannies of mountains or bridges.
Oh yeah, and then putting the location in a long line.
Yep.
You know that.
At some point in time, somebody will find that skull, and they'll wonder. I'm spreading wonder. So.
Oh my gosh, what an incredible idea.
I've got them in Alaska. I've got, I think, 2 in China somewhere. I have 1 in Puerto Rico. I have 1 in 1 or 2 in New Orleans. I've got 1 tucked into a crevice up on the Continental Divide in Colorado. So,
Gosh.
people that I'm close to, they'll take skulls with them to places they go and tuck them into places.
Well, every artist needs a skeleton, I think, in their closet to use as a model. Now let's talk more about the pottery.
Sure.
This looks like a Rubik's Cube. Do they rotate?
They do not. It's just straightforward. A cut. The brick is just a pattern on the work, and then all of that color, that chartreuse ribboning, was a 1-2-3rd layer of color on there before the black was applied by hand into the brick pattern. So they're more of I think all of my pots are an exploration of very technical kinds of forms. I've always been very fascinated with the fit of lids and things, stoppers and things on jars. That was actually how I got started with clay, was as soon as I got into a studio that had a wheel, and I was also working on the slip casting. I was slip casting bottles and jars and things, and then I was throwing on the wheel, making the lids and feet and handles and things for them. So the lids were like one of the first things. I was making lids far before I was making anything else. So it was mostly really a tight exploration of getting things very precise. And then I just got better and better on the wheel. So this large jar, I got it thrown and finished, and then the texture went on the first layer of color, which is the chartreuse that's on there. And then from there, just the color was developed over multiple firings. So mostly it's just it's just like this in my head, it's this brick pattern that, I'm constantly seeing in Cincinnati. We live in a very old city, lots of bricks, I have a cobblestone alley behind my house, lots of bricks, but lots of graffiti. So I think graffiti is really influencing the way that I approach the surfaces on pots since I've been here. So.
Yeah, multiple firings. What do you have, 3, 4 firings?
So I've got the bisque and usually the first layer of color, and then that goes through a masking techniques where I'm either using rubber bands or latex resist or Elmer's glue or wax, and doing airbrushing another couple of layers of color on, and then firing. And then these are all made separately. So each of them is 3 pieces. And so they all go through their own number of firings. Then I hand select, that stem works with that cup, that stem doesn't work, or it's not quite big enough, or it's too tall. Then I can I can just spend a day making stems, then spend another day making cups and feet, and put them together, once they get out of the firings, and see which one looks best. And then I can do that last layer of color to really tie them together.
Amazing, amazing. And then the quintessential tea set.
Yeah, kind of a staple in the potter's arsenal, at least the go-to once in a while. For me, these are very decorative, but they are, I was just exploring the idea of the traditional tea set as a canvas for this method of coloration, and how to apply the decoration on this very, very traditional kind of ceramic forms, idea of service and use and function, where this patterning and where this colorization would be best served on the pot, things like that. So. And then you can see with that one, it's also me still going back to other materials. So it's got a turned wooden handle. That's me working in the wood shop, being able to work on an idea in clay in a different studio. So like, turn the handles and get the design all worked out along the lines of, how am I going to integrate this other material, and how can I make it useful, things like that. So all those things are constantly with me.
Another turned handle.
Turned and distressed handle.
These, do you hang them around your neck?
You could. They'd be pretty heavy. I think, multiple people, want to know if they can be interchanged, and I just didn't, push that far. I knew this was going to be a one-of-a-kind thing, and that would take quite a bit of puzzlery to get those things to set securely on there, and then also be able to be removed. So otherwise, they're just, purely the implication of that they go up on that face.
Just kind of why I kind of feel like we've just scratched the surface of your work here.
Well, I think I think definitely with the faces, they're pretty young. A lot of them, this is the first time, through the time of this show, this last month, having people in here and little opportunities to really converse with people about them. It's they're pretty, like they are this year. Essentially, that one that's on the screen right now, I made in January, and it was just the beginning of that was the size. It's about 10 inches tall. It's not very big at all. And then when you get to the one with the teardrops, that's the biggest one so far. So they're exponentially growing. And then all of that comes with the new considerations that I have to make in how big my kiln is, how long they're going to take to dry, how to get them up on the wall securely, things like that.
Oh, here it is. Wow. So where were you when you came here? You came from Columbus?
I did. I was playing Uncle Josh up in Columbus.
Awesome.
My sister's kids.
Super duper. Well, thank you so much, Josh, for coming. And
you're very welcome. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's a great way to showcase your art. And I just feel like you're going to go right home back to the studio and work like a madman.
I'll definitely be working. We'll keep the madness at bay.
Oh, I'm going to have to read your words over there and type them up and put them out in the promotion when we send it out.
Yeah.
It's always good to have a little story by the artists.
Absolutely.
And I think one of these feathers and fur pieces had a child. Well, it was here.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Left a little something.
Gotcha.
Which one? Uh, As far as your selling, what's selling?
Still the small stuff right now. Lots of jars and pots and things. The sculptures, they certainly generate a lot of buzz and a lot of interest, but they are most definitely for a very, I guess maybe it's a niche market, or someone with a very kind of specific kind of taste, I guess we could say. But for the most part, the stuff that's easy to go, the pots and things, I think are the most marketable. But sculptures certainly move, but at a slow pace.
What's the reception been in the art world?
Seems like for just in this little bubble of the world, they're very well received. Generate quite a bit of attention, but they're pretty the bugs and the new work. Like I said, this is the first time the new work's been shown. The pots and stuff are kind of this stuff that's known more because it's so easy to transport, easy to show, things like that. So, and they're always very well received. So I've been very pleased.
Well, like the piece of the skulls, can you buy these individually or is it a set?
You can. They're displayed as a set, but you can certainly. I always sell them individually. The original arrangement of that was 4x4, so I've sold quite a few. I'm getting whittled down.
Are you represented by a gallery?
I am not here in Cincinnati.
Where else?
Nowhere else. Nowhere else.
Well, we have the Clay Alliance here.
I'm aware of the Clay Alliance.
How many years have you been in Cincinnati?
I moved here in 2017.
17.
So just right around 5-6 years.
So, and then the clay firing works in Oakley. What's that called?
Queen City. That was right in our residency.
I see. Where else do we have?
There's Core Clay is also
Where's that located?
It's in Norwood, somewhere in Norwood. They've both Queen City and Core Clay have recently taken up residence in new buildings. So I'm not sure where the new facility for Core Clay is. Queen City's is just off of Ridge.
Do you have a kiln at home?
I do. They are in storage just because of my arrangements at Northern Kentucky. I have all the kiln and material and space and things that I can work through without having to, get another home studio kind of built.
Boy, that's really a benefit, isn't it?
Quite.
Gee, it's like having a whole laboratory at your beck and call, plus all those students to help you.
Very much so. I have a few that are quite a help to me getting things moved around. His name's Tyler Fracher. He's a senior this year, but he's helped me quite a bit this year getting things to galleries or into crates and into storage and things. So,
well, where's your next show?
I have a show coming up next month at a printmaking gallery, a print gallery called Fuse. It's in Over the Rhine, and I'll be showing with 2 or 3 other artists. As far as I understand, I'm the only clay-based artist that's in the show. The show has been curated by John Steen, and he has curated it based on works that are focused on print. And so he was kind enough to offer me a spot in that show because of the way that I put my color and patterning and things on work is a very printerly method. So I kind of fit the bill for that.
Well, applying glaze to clay, you never really, what it's going to turn out, but it's only because you already fired and you've seen the techniques of the color.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're putting the glaze on, it's kind of a mystery, but a mystery, the artist knows.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating glazes.
Yeah, I think that for the most part, like I said, when I was in Bowling Green, like I didn't really care for a lot of the glazes that I saw. So it didn't really like appeal to me. But then, through my course of study of all this and starting to realize that vibrant color that I can achieve is a clay material and not having to rely on glaze. So like all of the color on like that pot and the one with the skulls, all the ones on the cups and things, all of that is just a colored clay body that fits that clay that it's made out of. And so other than a clear in satin, it's all the same clay that, I'm making the work with.
Well, this clay seems like the clays themselves have become incredibly versatile.
They are, and there is, I think, a lot of people, they know that clay is an earth material, but they are so, I guess, alterable.
Mm-hmm.
They can be tinkered to a maker's desire. There are things that can be added to clay or the base materials that, clay essentially is like a cookie recipe. Like it's got X amount of this, X amount of that, that's X amount of this. And all of those things do different things that give it, more plasticity, change its kind of firing range. It changes if it's gonna, how much it shrinks, how much it doesn't shrink, what things can be joined to it. For a long time, I was pretty abusive to my work, like how I would work it out to get it to the position or the display that it was in. And so I was having to really handle it aggressively at a few different times. And by study of adding paper into the clay, it was building strength, and then it burns out in the kiln and leaves the inside very porous like a sponge. And now that has its own little applications of using. So it's definitely, I brought a person in here to see it one night, had an appointment and got talking about it. They were like, wow, I didn't realize there was so much science to clay. And I'm like, it is probably the most science of the materials. Like glass and clay being sister mediums, like when you go to make that material, it's a little bit of chemistry. It's more than a little bit of chemistry, but for the most part, over time, we've got really tried and true recipes that we can follow, but, tiny inaccuracies or tiny changes can do lots of different things.
Fantastic. Well, I'll let you get on with your day and we'll close this out.
Yeah. Thank you very much for taking the time.
I'll send you a link of the video.
Sure. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd like to dedicate this song to all those people who are sailing a sailboat over to Russia. Sometime in the not too distant future. You don't gotta set a date. I'm sure you'll get there. They say he stood about 7 foot high. Peter the Great was a great big guy. to feed. He could mom us down. Any old street. He was not afraid of war. you can send that to Russia, you know, when you go. Make that kind of like our peace offering or something. You know what I'm saying?
Hello, my name is Faye O'Yutteren and I'm a cashier at Clifton Market.